Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Good evening and welcome to everyone joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you with us tonight. And we're looking forward to sharing some really valuable information, hoping that this is one of the many, many series that's going to offer value. Obviously, we are Mentor Ubuntu, but what you might not have heard about is our collaboration with CAN, the Caribbean and African Health Network. And they're so focused on helping people from our communities with improving their health, as well as many other aspects. It would be a fantastic opportunity for you to connect with them, find out what they do, and all the amazing work that they're doing to make sure that we all thrive as well as survive, especially during these hard times. And in partnership with CAN, we are going to be hosting a few events, webinars, and over the internet events such as you see tonight, as well as in-person events as we do with Mentor Ubuntu, in case you don't know about us. What we do is promote positive perceptions of mental health and Black men overall. And a big part of that is to build our communities, provide helpful information on the areas of life that will affect our mental health. Finance, of course, being one of those areas. And that's why tonight we're running the first of the Taking Control series, which focuses on finance. And we are graced with two fantastic speakers this evening. We have Geoffrey Diagana and Dr. Samuel Okerenta. Both of them specialize in helping people with financial planning, working with mortgages, and just demystifying some of those myths that we have when it comes to finances, and that perhaps leave members of our communities not as ahead as others. What you're going to receive is a valuable snippet or introduction to managing your finances if you haven't had one before. It is no replacement from sitting down with professionals such as Geoffrey and Sam for an extended period, and you're welcome to engage with them and their services or seek your own afterwards. That is the encouragement. But to begin, we will receive about 15 minutes from each of our speakers this evening. And following that, we have an allocation for questions and answers. So if you have questions as we're going along, if you can share them in the chat or make a note of them and wait until both speakers have spoken, because then we'll have about an hour or so within which they can go into more detail and answer all of your questions specifically. And again, this is being provided for free. Both have graciously offered to do so because they genuinely care about our community and want to do their part to help us all, again, thrive and survive, especially during these difficult times. And so without further ado or any more hesitation, to provide us with some valuable financial literacy and to kick off our webinars for taking control of our lives and communities, I begin by welcoming Geoffrey Diagana.
Thank you for the introduction. If I may share my screen. Is you able to see my screen on? Perfect. Right. So thanks for the introduction. My name is Geoffrey Diagana. I am a licensed financial advisor working for KWM Wealth Limited, which is a senior partner practice of St. James's Place Wealth Management, and also regulated by the FCA. Today, I will be sharing with you some of the processes and factors that we can all consider to achieve financial well-being over the long term. And as alluded to, this presentation is only for general information purposes and does not form part of any formal advice. In order to provide a formal advice, your personal circumstances would have to be considered. So, to begin with, I'd like to start with a quick fire question. I'm not sure whether there may be some volunteers who may be willing to give an answer to, but when is the best time to start planning for the future? Any volunteers on an answer?
When you have a family?
Fair enough. Any more?
Now.
Fair. So, in fact, from my point of view, now is actually the second best time. The best time was yesterday, right? And I guess now is, the typical answer that we give ourselves, and for the majority is, I'll start tomorrow. And in fact, we cannot buy time, and the lack of action creates a greater cost for tomorrow, right? The future starts today and not tomorrow. But essentially, the best time to have started planning was, yesterday and not necessarily today. I commonly interact with individuals who believe and feel that organizing their finances or seeking professional support is something that only the rich should do. And I think from my perspective, it's just it's a myth, right? It's true that there are some institutions out there that only cater for those with substantial assets. However, this does not deter us or you and I from employing the same principles to achieve our financial goals, right? So if I were to describe wealth or being wealthy from my perspective, it's attaining sustainable finances that allows you not to worry about money, right? It doesn't necessarily mean having millions. And it's very different to just being rich at any given point in time, because, being rich and not being organized, can lead to you losing all. And we have common example like Mike Tyson, who made hundreds of millions in their careers, but went bankrupt. So I would also go by defining financial planning as being a process an individual takes to achieve this state of not worrying about money over the long term, over the span of your life, right? This process involves using as many tools in your disposal to give yourself the best chance of achieving, your financial objectives, for you, not only for you, but also for your family. So it's really a process of achieving that state of being wealthy, which is a state of not worrying about money, right? You don't need millions to be in a state of not worrying about money. So here I've highlighted some factors that, I believe affect common factors that really affect the sustainability of your finances. One of the common factors that we deal with, or we have to speak to our clients about, is the longer lifespan, right? So we are all living longer today due to improvements in pharmaceuticals, nutrition, and the general standards of living, right? Reaching the ripe age of potentially 100, may not be uncommon in the future. I was actually reading a stat today that it is predicted that 1 in 3 babies born in the UK today will live until the age of 100. So really, if you retire, or if you plan to retire around the age of 55, 60, you're almost expected to live another 30 odd years. And that's a 30 odd years retirement for which, you got a fund for. And that's almost as long as your working career, right? So your retirement is likely to be as long as your working career. Another factor is inflation, right? So some of you may already be familiar with the concept of inflation, but the cost of living does not stay constant, right? It does not stay stagnant. The prices of goods and services increase on average each year. So the cash in your bank account slowly loses its value due to inflation. Another important aspect that I deal with on a day-to-day basis is the question around state pension, right? So state pension will likely not be enough to meet most of our needs. And secondly, you would need to have contributed your national insurance for a full 35 years to get a maximum of £9,000 a year, right? And that's a mere £9,000 a year, right? Most people's basic standard of living already exceeds that £9,000 a year. And there's also that possibility that the state retirement age gets pushed further back as we age. And I think the last point I wanted to mention, which I think is very, very important in our society today, and this is one of the most prominent dangers of our current society. In fact, the explosion of social media has influenced many of us to live way beyond our means, right? To maintain that image in social media, right? And it's an image which comes at a great cost to our current and our future welfare, right? So these are really important factors that we need to be considering as we move forward, as we plan around our finances to really sustain our financial welfare over the long term. So I highlighted inflation in the previous slide, right? £10,000 20 years ago would roughly buy you around £6,500 worth of the same goods in today's money. So really, in other words, to buy the same goods today that you would have been able to buy 20 years ago, you would need around £15,000, right? The risk could actually be greater going forward, and then due to the way that the government had supported the economy following COVID, analysts are predicting the inflation to rise much higher. As recent as this morning, I saw an article from Sky News which had reported that inflation rates are predicted to be rising above 4%. Now, a personal example to me, which I was thinking about, a couple of days ago, when I went to school, when I started secondary school nearly 20 years ago, a Freddo bar of chocolate used to be around 10 pence, right? Today, it will cost you around 25 pence, depending on where you're buying that Freddo bar of chocolate. It means that for my parents, right, they would have to give my youngest sibling, who's also starting secondary school this year, nearly 3 times the pocket money that they gave me for him to have the same level of satisfaction. Right, so there is a risk to leaving our money in cash and in a bank account. So here I'm going to be illustrating one of the many approaches to achieving financial stability. Right? So first of all, I think we've got to resist the temptation and get a handle on what we're actually spending on right? So make use of the tools to help you track, prioritize your expenses. Typical things like within the household having multiple Amazon Prime subscription, right? You only need one per household potentially. Merging maybe your Netflix plan, for example, right, could save you a few pennies there and there. Shopping around each year for your utility bills can save you a couple of £100 a year. And even more recently, for myself, being a financial planner, when myself and my partner operated our phones, we didn't realize that we both had contents insurance for my home, which covered our phone, and yet had taken our phone insurances for both of our plans. So, when I conducted our sort of financial home review, I noticed that we had 2 outgoings to 2 insurance companies that we simply didn't need. Right? So, and those are ways that you can really reduce your spending. Set a savings target and make it a habit, right? Don't spend all the money in the world and then save the residual, right? Set a target, put that target away, whatever that may be, and then use the residual to spend for your discretionary expenses. Next, look for ways to reduce tax, right? A primary example could be, when you have disposable income, utilizing your private pension is an element which I will talk to later on in a presentation. But looking for ways to reduce tax for those that have businesses, for those that are self-employed, work with an accountant to help you reduce and have better control of your taxes. So we go from saving by spending less, saving more, reducing our taxes and utilizing all of that additional income that additional disposable income that we're creating by saving to then build your assets and make your money work for yourself, right? So grow those savings by making your money work for yourself. And this could be achieved by by investing, for example, and it could be going into property development or having buy-to-lets, or for some millennials, it's crypto. So now the ultimate aim is to increase the income for when you stop working. And personally speaking, I don't want to work for the rest of my life and right up until the age of 70, 80. So I'm doing the best that I can to build a pot which is working for itself, and at some point will generate some income which I can use to sustain my life later on down the line. And whether that means me doing more charitable work and things of that nature, I have the flexibility to do so. So I'm not advocating that you should not be enjoying your life, but at least don't do so at a great cost of a longer, adequate lifestyle. I said the cost of really not starting today and not starting early is far too great. We cannot buy time. And I mean, that's one fundamental that doesn't change, that we cannot buy time. It comes at a point where it may become too late for certain individuals. So how can we grow our savings, right? There are many tools out there, and I highlighted properties. You've got stocks and shares that you can invest into, starting a business, and maybe some in crypto. There isn't one best answer or one best solution, right? It's only a matter of what's right for your circumstances. But for my purposes today, I'm highlighting one of the most simplest processes that every single person on this call has the ability to do so, because buy-to-lets may be a far stretch for others. Crypto may be too volatile, too much of a headache for others. So investing passively using diversified stocks and shares funds, where the overall aim is to grow your money so that you can take some form of income from the growth whilst preserving the asset that's generating you that income. So to really allow you to sustain a lifestyle that you desire over a longer period of time, and potentially pass it on to the next generation if you outlive those assets, right? So I think the key term here is really sustaining income for the lifestyle that you want throughout now into your retirement and into your later life. So how can you achieve this? So if you have assets that you're potentially growing in investments, right? We're going to use a hypothetical growth rate of 6% per year, which is not unrealistic, right? And it's fairly conservative when you're looking at how the financial markets have performed over the last 10, 20, 30 years. So you have a pot of money that's growing at 6%. If you withdraw, 6% or less per year as income, what does that mean? You're not eroding, you're not depleting the value of your cash, the value of your asset, because all that you're doing is taking income or drawing income from that 6% growth. So it would mean that you can support your income, so you can support the lifestyle that you desire from that income that you're generating passively, and potentially retire earlier than you potentially would have otherwise, or not necessarily about retirement, but just to support or to complement your lifestyle in 5, 10, 15 years time from now, whenever it may be. Now, if we follow this principles where we've got an asset that's invested and it's working for us, it's generating 6% growth, or however much it may be, and you're drawing out that average growth for maybe 6% or less, it means you can really protect the value of your assets, potentially outlive your assets, and when you're no longer able to pass those assets down to the next generation and educate them to use the same principles or living off that growth to sustain that income. And if they consume, or you consume more than the growth, it just means that the value of your assets will deplete much slower. Now, some of you asking yourself, how does the market, so how do we get this growth, right? How does the financial markets allows us to get this growth? So one of the engine that makes your money work for itself, right, through passive investing is known as compound growth, right? So let's say hypothetically speaking, you're saving £100 a month into a bank account, right? So when you save money in a bank account, your money grows in a linear fashion. So you save first month is £100, the next month is £200, the following is £300, 5 months after that is £500. And that's that dotted line on the screen, right? Your money growing in a linear fashion. Whereas when you invest, it grows exponentially. It takes the upward curve approach, right? And why that is because you begin to earn money on the growth itself. And this is what we refer to as that engine that generates growth, and that where the money works for itself is because the growth that you make on your original money also starts to earn some additional growth, right? This is really the engine that allows you to spearhead and grow your money. So fundamentally speaking, the earlier you start, the more time you give your money to work for yourself. And essentially over years, you can be surprised with what you can achieve over the long term. I deal with many clients. We deal with many clients. We've seen client accounts that have grown over 10, 20, 30 years. And it's just absolutely surprising and surprising to see, what other individuals and families have been able to achieve over the long term. And these are not far-fetched dreams, and these are tools and processes that's within our reach. So compound growth in action, right? It's never too late to start building your wealth. And I think I'll use this this opportunity to kind of illustrate some basic example of how £250 per month in an investment savings plan can grow over the long term. And what we're going to do is assume that conservative 6% growth per year. Now, if you were to be saving, £250 over 10 years and growing at 6%, right, you yield roughly £42,000. You do so over 20 years, that potentially turns into close to £120,000. You do so over 30 years, that's around £250,000. Now, and if also maybe open up to the audience, does anyone know how much you would have saved in cash had you saved that £250 over those 30 years? No one? Right. So £250 over 30 years, that's around £90,000 of your capital. So alternatively, if someone was only saving it in cash over 30 years, those £250 would have saved or accumulated to £90,000. Whereas by taking an investment approach and investing regularly, you may be able to otherwise yield £250,000, which is nearly three times what you would have saved in your cash account. And bearing in mind what we highlighted earlier, the cost of inflation, right? Because the value of your cash depletes. Compared to 20 years, if you saved £250 in cash, that would have yielded you, that would accumulated to £60,000. Whereas having invested those £250 per month and growing at a conservative 6% per annum, that potentially generates you £120,000, which is double what you would have saved in cash. And it kind of goes to illustrate the difference this can make in your overall lifestyle over the long term by taking a decision today and being consistent with those decisions. So really, where you save and how you save your money today can make a considerable difference to your lifestyle over the long term. Earlier, I highlighted the concept of generating passive income using the growth. So if we take that example that we've just used from the previous slide, so you have generated this pot over 10, 20, 30 years, and it continues to grow at 6%. So you take income at 6% or less on average per year, your money doesn't run out, because if on one end you've got 100 grand pot and it grows at 6% on average per year, that's 6 grand, and you take 6 grand or less per year, your money doesn't run out, your money doesn't deplete. And this is where the term of intergenerational wealth comes in, and this is how the middle and the upper class simply structure their finances. Now, what would that mean in reality for you? So after 10 years, you would have accumulated 42 grand in savings, in investments in your investment pot. Now, if you took out 6% or less in order to preserve and protect your 42 grand, and that would allow you to take out an income of £2,500 per annum for a very long time without depleting the £42,000. And that's close to £200 a month to supplement your income requirements from when you decide to take passive income. Now we move on to the example after 20 years, and this is where we begin to see really the power of compounding effect and what it can yield for us over the years. After 20 years, you've built up a pot of nearly £120,000. You're taking out £6,000 or 6% or so. That's around £7,000 per year, right? Which is around £600 or so, just under £600 per month to supplement your income. We go over 30. The example of an individual who did it over 30 years. Investing and made £250 per month and was consistent. They generated 250 grand in their investment pot, and they now decide to generate that income around 6% or less. That's £15,000 per year, right? Giving you an income of just above £1,000 per year, whilst you're preserving and protecting that 250 grand asset that you've accumulated and you've built over time. Right. So now, if we take this example and we say, now you are a couple or within a family, and then there's two of you, there's two spouses, one takes the same approach and the other does as well. And you were both, say, doing £250 over 20, 30 years, and you've both accumulated 250 grand each. So this means that as a couple, you may now be able to generate close to £30,000 in passive income to support your income requirements and your lifestyle, right? Without doing too much work. And we can almost say as sitting on your sofa, watching TV whilst your investments grow for itself. Of course, you should be reviewing it with professional support on an ongoing basis. But nevertheless, you give yourself this possibility, maybe between you and your partner, to generate £30,000 in passive income, right? Whilst you're preserving between the both of you £500,000 in capital, right? That £30,000 maybe supplements your other side incomes or your other small businesses. And, when you're no longer around, and assuming you outlive this £500,000 between you as a couple, that £500,000 gets passed down to the next generation. Right. So I guess passive investing is not really a process where we're trading stocks and we're trying to outwit the financial markets. No, we just want to harness the power of the financial markets and compound growth to really give you the highest probability of success and generating passive income to really supplement your lifestyle and over a long period of time. Right. This is just not a number that we're generating profit from for the sake of it, but we're really associating growth with the lifestyle that we want to maintain over the long term. So I talked about, investing. Now, I think one of the most important thing about using the approach of potential investing is to really think about, or in any venture, in fact, whether it's buy-to-lets or your own businesses, being self-employed, is to think about ways where you can reduce or better plan against tax, right? So in terms of investing, the stocks and share ISA is one of the most tax efficient tools that you can use to grow your wealth, right? Like I mentioned, it's not the only way. This is just one of a number of tools that you can have within your financial toolbox if you do cryptos alongside your cryptos, if you do buy-to-lets alongside your buy-to-lets, and if you do your business alongside your business. With an ISA, you can invest up to £20,000 in stocks and shares funds per year and never pay a single penny of tax. So even if you built up £1 million pot in your ISA, or between you and your partner's ISA, over the next 15, 20, 25 years, you would not be paying any tax on that growth or on that income. And in fact, the ISA is completely accessible at any time. And with technology at our fingertips now, it's almost like online banking, where you could decide to withdraw money for an immediate income requirement as of when you need it. When you don't need it, the money lives in the market, and it carries on working and benefiting from that compounding growth engine. Similarly, private pensions are another tax efficient way, one of the most tax efficient way to really build your wealth, right? The way to think of pensions is simply one of the many approaches that you can use to spread your wealth, right? And not this idea that you need to sacrifice your life today and live on a bare minimum to save for a distant future. Not necessarily. It's simply one of the tools in your financial toolbox that you can use to grow your overall wealth. And when you factor in the benefits of the pension, which is the tax relief, where the government gives you your tax back when you contribute to private pension, it really improves the returns and the performance based on the free money you're getting from the government. So with private pensions, if you're a basic rate taxpayer earning up to £50,000, if you contribute into your private pension, and let's say if you wanted to contribute £100 in this example, right, it would cost you, or you would pay £80 into your private pension scheme, and then the scheme provider would claim another £20 from the government, and the overall £100 will be invested. So as a basic rate taxpayer, it's costing you £80 to have £100 invested into your private pension. Now, if you are a high rate taxpayer earning over £50,000 and you decide to contribute a gross amount of £100 in a pension, it would in fact cost you £60, because you would get back the £40 that you would have otherwise paid in your income tax, and the overall £100 will be invested into your private pension. And for a top rate taxpayer paying 45% tax, it would cost you £55, sorry, in order to have £100 contributed into your private pension. So the best way to really achieve and to predict the future is to create it, right? If you want to achieve that desired lifestyle tomorrow, is to act on it from today, not tomorrow. In fact, it would have been better to start, yesterday or a year ago, right? But it's really never too late to start and implement the process. Set a savings target, right? Spend the remainder, as opposed to the other way around. There are many apps out there. There are many tools out there to really help you track and manage your spending, and really pay attention to some of the expenditure that's going on that you can better control or that you can better reduce, right? Because, we've looked at some of the examples earlier based on compounding growth and having your money invested. You can reorganize your life, and you're better able to save an additional £100 by simply reprioritizing, or £200 by reprioritizing your finances and invest in that. It could mean a lot of a difference over the long term. And second, set a regular time aside to review your finances and sort out your admin, whether it's once a month or once a quarter for you, but spend time on it. It's valuable. In relation to investing, there are many resources online to educate you on the process of investing and how to manage your risk. But where you can, use the support of a professional. The aim is to be consistent and use the investment as a more efficient way to save your money on a monthly or on a regular basis, whenever that may be for you. and not this idea to make profit and quickly run. All right, so not this idea, especially with us millennials. You go on Instagram, there's this person talking about Forex or this type of trading, and yes, you can make a quick profit. What does profit and that number mean if you don't associate it as part of your lifestyle, right? But here we're looking at a way to grow your wealth sustainably, right? In a way that you can also sustainably support your income requirements at a later point in life. So money and profit without associating to the lifestyle that you desire for you and your family over the long term is almost like a meaningless or frivolous number in the air. In relation to your private pension, most of us would be working, and we would have a private pension pot via our companies. Take an active role on how your pension is invested, right? Because it will be invested. Review them regularly. We all should be receiving a yearly statement. Don't ignore it. Please don't ignore it. Pay attention to how it's invested. Speak to or solicit the service, or maybe some views from a professional on how it's performing, and is it invested in the right funds within that provider, right? Because pensions, in fact, are likely to be your second biggest asset to your home, right? For most of us, second to our home, and for those that don't build a very successful business, our private pensions are likely to be our second biggest asset. So decisions that you make today could result in a considerable difference, in the value of your pot, in the quality of the life that you have later on in life. If you have many pension pots, because you've worked over several companies over the years, consider aggregating your pension into one pot to make it easier for you to manage. And I guess combination of managing your expenditure and your savings better, which you have in your control, utilizing structures such as the ISA to save money for the midterm, because in terms of your short term, you should always have maybe 6 to 12 months of disposable income, so 6 to 12 months of your expenditure in emergency cash or an emergency fund, just in case the worst case happens, right? And beyond that, you may not necessarily need to be building up, a much more cash in your current account, in your savings pot. Consider now using those disposable, those additional funds, maybe for investing, and utilizing the ISA for that short to medium term and 5 to 15-year time period, right? Whether it's buying a new car in 5 years' time, whether it's supporting the kids with university costs, the ISA is readily accessible to you. With private pensions, you then look at that long-term pot, right? 15 plus years from today, and when you go into retirement, right? So it's not you giving away your money to the government, it's your money, which is invested in the pot, which is simply very tax efficient. And those three structures of saving adequately, allocating those savings to growing your wealth and using tax wrappers such as ISAs, making the most of the tax relief that you get from pensions to build money over the long term, creates a resilient financial structure for you to benefit from over the long term. And of course, I talk about ISA and pensions today for simplicity of the presentation, but there are many, many other tools that you can use within your box, especially as you start to earn more income and as you start to generate more disposable income, to really be tax efficient and preserve or retain more of that money as opposed to giving more away to the taxman, because again, that can make a massive difference to your life. So whether that being VCTs to offset income tax and capital gain tax, EISs to deferred tax, junior pensions to start investing for your child from when they're born, a mere £100 investment or £200 a month investment into a junior pension where the government also tops it up with 20%, right? And you do that for your child over a couple of years, and you let that money grow over 30, 40 years, that is going to grow to a considerable amount, whether it's similarly with junior ISAs, right? And for those that become wealthy, utilizing investment bonds and well, rather than saying wealthy, I'll rephrase it to, for those that gain access to considerable amounts of assets, using investment bonds and trusts to better structure finances for your family, so that you can retain as much of those assets for you and the next generation. So when you then start to look at finances between you and your partner as a family, there are ways where you can better structure it, reduce the tax that you're paying, reduce the cost or you reduce your expenditures to really grow wealth as a family, because it can make a massive difference over the long term. So to kind of end my presentation, kind of 3 key takeaways that I'd like to leave you with, which are on the screen. We risk outliving our savings. Right now, almost everyone has to save more for their retirement, right? Because we can't rely on state pension, or we can't rely on government support, or we can't rely on the old final salary scheme that companies used to guarantee an income in retirement. Those just no longer exist for most of us. So if you don't accumulate enough, you risk outliving your savings, given the long life expenditure for most of us living today. I see this every single day as part of my work. Prospects call in our practice to inquire and obtain advice on what they're going to do, because they simply didn't accumulate enough national insurance contribution for state pension, or state pension simply ain't enough to support income. And they're on the phone in tears, asking for some form of miracle on how they can better support their income requirements. So consider the life that you want to live now and throughout your entire life. Try not to only live for today's social pressure, because the cost of tomorrow is simply far too great. And to add to that, or to make the matter worse, we cannot buy time, right? We cannot buy time. For someone in their mid-20s today, putting away a modest fraction of their income, could afford a really comfortable retirement, post their 60s, and still have enough money to live, to the age of 100. And lastly, seek professional help, seek professional support, right? Like we've I hope I've highlighted today, small decisions today can have an exceptional and an exponential impact over a lifetime, right? Because I've seen this, and this is not just speaking hypothetically. We've seen clients, the middle class and the upper classes, the way they structure their finances and how their finances have worked for them. So you can implement those processes to achieve the concept of being wealthy, right? Which is a state where you're not worrying about money. Not just, you don't need millions to not worry about money. It's just having your finances well structured. And there are many advisors out there that welcome the opportunity to conduct complimentary reviews. So reach out to them, right? Reach out to them, because they're always willing to talk. I'm always willing to talk, right? And that's why I do my job. I'm really always willing to talk, always willing to help, and and that's what makes me tick. I'll rather be sitting speaking to an individual and helping out with a case, rather than doing admin work and in front of a computer. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. My name is Jeffrey Garner. Thank you for your time today. And if you would like to learn more or discuss anything in relation to your personal finances, please use my contact details on the screen, or book a meeting directly using my online calendar shown on the screen. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. That's a great job at condensing quite a lot of information and giving us a great introduction overall to how we can start to plan, how we can start thinking about introducing these concepts to our children, and some of the strategies that we can employ. I'm sure I've got a few questions about all this. I'm sure a few other people listening will do as well. I'm looking forward to bringing those up later. And now that we've had a bit of a exploration of the different financial tools that are available to us, we are then graced by Dr. Sam Okerenta, and he specializes in mortgage protection advice. And he wants to let us know how we can go about protecting ourselves, perhaps protecting our businesses, and some of the ways that engaging with a financial advisor could help us, perhaps when it comes to mortgages. And with that said, please welcome Dr. Sam Okerenta.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry. Yes. Good evening,
Okay.
Sam. We can hear you clearly and see you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that good job that you have done. It's amazing that we have loads of information tonight, and having taken loads of information, it will do us great good if we can act on them. Like he said, the time to start should have been yesterday, but today is better. So I'm going to be talking to us, speaking about insurance and mortgages. The company I work for is Eminent Financial, and we are appointed representatives of Open Work. The information I'm going to pass on to us today, like Jeffrey said, in the financial industry, this does not constitute an advice. If you need an advice, financial advice, you need to do that in person. So I'm going to be going as quickly as I can to be sure that we grasp as much information that I can give tonight. And I'll be happy to answer some questions at the end. Okay, so looking at mortgage is actually a loan that we receive from a lender after the lender has done due diligence on the borrower to be able to qualify him or her based on affordability and all other checks that could be done to say, yeah, this is a good borrower. We are happy to lend you this money so you can acquire a property over the number of years that you may desire. So looking at buying a property, whether it's a buy-to-let or a residential, there are two types of property purchase, which is buy-to-let. Residential is where you will need to live. And in UK, you are only allowed to have one residential home. And anytime you buy another home, there is always a surcharge of 3% on land tax, SDLC. So first and foremost, when you think about buying a home, you need to establish a budget. How much property value do you want to acquire? How much is your income and all that? You move forward that to look at finding an ideal property that fits into that budget line that you are expecting. Though the starting point is to speak to an advisor, but I'll come to that later. Then you obtain a mortgage in principle or mortgage application in principle, depending on which lender that is going to do that for you. And that is a document that would have been able to use to assess your affordability, assess that at least your credit referencing is good enough. And that document, you are armed with it to visit any developer if you're buying a brand new home, or an estate agent, to show them that, yes, I'm ready to buy this home. And this is a proof that I have made an inquiry, and this has been done by a lender to say, yes, I'm ready to get a loan to purchase a property. So when you have done that and gotten a full acceptance from the seller or the developer by reserving a plot, then you come back to that process again, that cycle, to make a full mortgage application. On this full mortgage application, there is a hard search on your credit record. so that they will prove also that, yes, indeed, we have done a preliminary search. Now we want to check every details to assess your affordability. And when that is done, what follows next is you receiving what we call a mortgage offer. This is the lender saying, yes, we can give you this loan. And a mortgage offer actually is what constitutes the mortgage deed that you will receive at the end or towards the end of the process. By the time you do completion and exchange, the frustration or the mortgage offer is what constitutes that. Then the next process is an exchange and completion. They can happen simultaneously. They can happen a day or 2 weeks or 1 month, depending on the lender or the property. So how does a lender assess you in terms of your income? There are various ways that lenders look at. They look at the income. It can come from self-employment if you are self-employed. It can come from employment. It can come from directorship. It can come from other secure incomes and trust, which you can use or present to the lender to assess your capacity to borrow. So the financial requirement for first-time buyers, I just want to dwell on this. A sensible thing to do is to speak to an advisor when you are considering buying a property. And I will allude this to maybe a woman that is pregnant. As soon as she becomes pregnant, she registers with the midwife, and the midwife walks with the child throughout until the day the child is born. So you don't just wait to give birth, but as soon as you start, you've tested positive, then you begin to plan for the arrival of the baby. So we need to establish how much can you borrow actually. Based on your gross income, most lenders will consider about 4.5 multiples of income or 5 times your gross income to be able, that's just what you can borrow. But when they go down to check your affordability, they can check if you are able to borrow 30% or 70% or 50% based on your income. And I want to say this, that if you are married, it is better you do your purchase together, because that gives you some more bargaining power than saying, okay, let the husband buy the property later, the woman, the spouse will buy later, and they will, in order to maybe start a business and all that. Anytime one person buys a property and the other person is living there, if anything, if the worst happens, the person that is not on the mortgage deed may find it difficult not to have rights to that property, because that's how lenders look at it. So deposits can come through savings or gifts from families or relatives or friends. Some lenders can accept that. And say, for instance, there are schemes that can give you 10%. There are schemes that can give you 5%. Help to Buy gives you, the borrower, 5%, and the scheme gives you additional 20%. So you can now borrow from the lender 75% as a scheme if that person is struggling with deposits. So associated lenders' fees must be taken into consideration, because there are what they call an arrangement fees that may be paid depending on the product that you are going for. There are legal fees for solicitors, there are such fees and so on that has to be paid, and they have to be factored into your budget when you are looking for a property. Stamp duty, land tax. There are these changes from year to year. Every financial year, the stamp duty changes, and who pays it can be given, that you can understand who pays it when you sit down with an advisor to be able to help you if you can incur stamp duty, or you can have a property that doesn't incur stamp duty. Assessment of employment income. Credit report is very important. Most lenders look at Experian reports and Equifax. So you might have all the other credit agencies, but they look at this in details. And it's always good not to have a default or CCJ on your credit file or missed payments, because that will impact your ability to borrow greatly. Because most lenders, if they feel that you are not faithful in paying £20 that you owe a creditor, how can they trust you with 150,000 grand as loan? So they check that very, very carefully to be sure that you are qualified and that you're a good and dependable borrower before they can lend you money. So look at base net income. Your basic net income is what is looked at it. In as much as we look at the gross, what is the basic net income that will be looked at. All the expenses that you make can be factored into it. Some people that receive a location allowance, shift allowance, overtime, and guaranteed bonuses, the lenders can also use them, but they can decide to take a percentage of it, can be 50% or 40%, is at their discretion to do. So assessment of self-employment is entirely different. For those that have owned their company, most of the people work for themselves, but they have a limited liability company. The lenders do not look at you as a company owner. They look at you as self-employed. Most lenders will look at how much you are paying yourself in PAYE plus your dividend. That's what constitutes your gross income. So that's how lenders assess that. Some of them also look at the turnover of the company. They look at the net profit. They look at also an average of 2 years of these documents, and they have to be from HMRC, and your accountants will be able to provide this at will. So lenders look at the disposable income in various ways. They look at your committed expenditure. These are contract agreements that you have that will continue after the new mortgage has been taken. Say, for instance, you have a hire purchase car, you have to continue to pay that until the end of the term. So the lenders will factor that into your affordability. They will look at also your basic expenditure for your needs, maybe council tax, your food and all that. And the quality of life expenditure also is taken into consideration when they are assessing how much disposable income you have, your mobile phone, your lifestyle in terms of everything you do will be taken into consideration. Then buy-to-let financing, let me just mention briefly on this. Most people that do buy-to-let go through bridging finance, and which is a short-term loan that they can take to help them buy the property, refurbish it, and put it back into market or remortgage it in order to grow their portfolio, like Jeffrey has said. So that's just an overview of how mortgage works. Now, Jeffrey is doing so much about financial planning and goal setting, which is very key to everyone that lives. And it's important that we take it and start implementing that. So the future will come, and our families and ourselves are important to us. We need to plan for them. We need to protect what is important for us. In terms of everything we do, insurance or protection is the bedrock of financial planning. Because if at times that we are unable to work, because the principle I want to share with us is what we call the principle of financial security. Financial security means that it's a journey that stands from point A to point B. And whenever we go to work, we receive an income that comes in exchange of our skills and the time that we have spent at work. And when we cannot work as a result of accident, sickness, or injury, it becomes a rainy day for us, irrespective of how old we are. So to attain financial security status, we need to ensure, or that's the point at which our income that comes from our wages will be equal or greater than the money that we receive from all other passive incomes, like profit from business, interest on savings, or return on investments, like we have heard earlier on. So that is the state of financial security. Then insurance is, like I said, is a form to mitigate financial loss that can happen to anybody, because we live in a world of uncertainty. It helps you to manage your risks, primarily to hedge contingencies that can come at any point in time. When you take up insurance, you transfer the risk to somebody else. You are not on your own. Somebody else can take over if there was need for you to make a claim. So where does protection come in while we are planning our life? It gives you that peace of mind that if anything happens, that you are safe. And when we don't plan or take up protection, we leave ourselves so exposed. Insurance helps us to prepare and live a life of prosperity just in case an adverse condition comes around us. When we talk about insurance and protection, there are two major categories. We have the general insurance, home insurance, landlord, and all that. But personal protection, like life cover, critical illness, income protection, and accident protection, all these insurance, they are not one cap fits all. Sometimes some people feel that when they have a life insurance, oh, they are fully covered. It's a myth in protection. For every insurance, the underwriting conditions are different. A life cover cannot be substituted for a critical illness. A critical illness cannot be substituted for an income protection. Also, an income protection cannot be substituted for an accident protection. So for you to be fully covered in protection, you need all these four insurance policies, irrespective of how much benefit you have. Because when you have done that, if we were to suffer a critical illness, the policyholder was to suffer a critical illness, he could be covered. He could make a valid claim, provided they have taken that policy that is well underwritten by a reputable insurance company and full medical disclosures have been done. Because sometimes most people go online to do insurance, which is equivalent to us digging our graves, because you will fall into it and nobody can rescue somebody into that pit. So it's good to meet an advisor, have your insurance, personal protection insurance underwritten, and also being honest and truthful to make every disclosure as far as personal protection are concerned. How much does it cover you? How much cover do you need as a person? We look at what we use in the industry as shortfall calculator, which can be in form of fact finding and need analysis. Life cover for everybody that needs it is 90% of your annual gross income, and we multiply it by the age of your youngest dependent child. A critical illness is 4 times your annual gross. An income protection, some insurance companies look at 55 to 65 of your gross income to be able to give you that level of income that will substitute the wages that you receive if you were unable to work as a result of accident or sickness. An accident protection can cover for up to 200,000, depending on your budget. And all these things depends on your affordability. So if you have £100, you can get a cover. If you have a £20, you can get a cover. And all these ones would depend on what your needs are. Debts, like we know, they are like children. They are smaller. The smaller they are, the more noise they make. Interest on debt grows without rain. So we should be wary of that. We should understand that whenever we have a debt, it is there and we need to make conscious effort to pay it. We should not allow others to bear our burden. You know, so many times, so many people say, oh, even if I die, I'll leave the debt for my children. That's not a good way to live. We should all carry our cross. So I share another principle with us, which I call principle of financial intelligence. Anytime we receive an income, it comes onto us as 100%. And because you are the goose that lays the golden egg, we recommend that you pay yourself 10% of your monthly net income. Use it and give yourself a treat, because if you didn't pay yourself and you become unwell, you will not produce income and you will not pay the taxman. So we'll also look at those that are in the community, to give money to the community as a charity or faith, depending on what your faith is. Put money down and help other people in the community, support them. Pay about 10% of that. And we also talk about saving at least 10% of our income. Like Jeffrey said, let's invest it so that the money will begin to work for us. 65% of our income should be our spendables. Anytime your outgoing is more than 65%, what we recommend in the industry is that you need to upskill. Leave that role that you are doing. It's not good enough for you, because you should be able to save money out of whatever income that you receive. Then the integral part of this principle is you spending at least 5% of your income on protecting yourself, because for every farmer, they preserve a seed that they will be using in the next season. And if a farmer does not plant, there will be no harvest. So when you protect your crops, you will have a harvest. When you protect your income, if there were to be droughts, then you know where to go. You can be protected. Right. On this slide, which you are seeing now, we have three major things that I want to just share with you. Whether you believe in insurance or whether you get an insurance or not, someone will have to pay during sickness, an accident, or disability. The question is, who do you want to pay? Is it your family or the insurance company? If you are to go to hospital and somebody wants to visit you, and he comes with a bouquet of flower or a check, which one would you prefer? Remember that the flower will wilt in a few hours, but the check, maybe that will come from an insurance company, that can help cushion the mental trauma, could help cushion the financial trauma. It could also help you to recover because you will have peace of mind. Something I want to touch about is about you having a trust for insurance that you have. Say, for instance, in this country, there is what they call inheritance tax, and it is 40% of your estate. HMRC will receive a letter after somebody dies, and they will write to the family to pay inheritance tax. They will send the document and you will need to complete it and return to them. And they will assess the estate that the person has. And every year, in this current year, every spouse has 325,000 threshold. So if their asset is more than the threshold, they would have to pay inheritance tax of 40%, and it's non-negotiable. So in order to avoid some of those tax, what you need to do is to put your insurance policies in trust so that you have a named beneficiaries when who are able to benefit from that policy that you have toiled and paid for over time. And in the worst case scenario, anybody that doesn't have a trust, and if they die intestate, it will take longer time for probate to complete everything before that asset of the deceased can be distributed. So in setting up a trust, the policyholder is known as the settlor, and there are 3 or more people that are called trustees that are involved that will be managing the assets of the policy or the gifts that the settlor has put in place, and it will go to the beneficiaries, who could be a charity, members of the family, friends, and all that, but they have to be put down on paper, signed by the settlor when he or she is still alive. So reasons for using a trust for insurance policy is that when the insurance company will be paying, the money goes to the right person. That's what we call right money. The insurance policy is the right money, it goes to the right hand, and also is paid on time. There's no probate. Some insurance companies can pay a life cover or a critical illness in 2 weeks. So using trust is something that everybody that has a policy, or you are going to have a policy, ask your advisor that you need a trust. A trust helps you to protect what is you have, so that you don't incur unnecessary tax liability on it. So this is where I'm going to be stopping now. If you have any questions, you can ask later. Thank you for listening wherever you are. I hope you have added some knowledge to what you knew already before coming to this call. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sam. We really appreciate all of that very, very helpful information. And thank you for putting your information up on the screen at the moment for anyone to take note of. And yeah, please feel free to get in touch with us. You can find Mentalk Ubuntu or Khan UK on most of the social media platforms. And wow, how much value have we gotten so far? And we're just also now able to get into some of the questions with both of our guest speakers. I think one of the key highlights that's come out of this all is how much we have to be, or when we are a community and we're working together to achieve all of these issues, whether that's sharing the Netflix account or whether that's trying to figure out what we can leave for the next generation so that they're not faced with addressing the debts that we had. It shows the importance of creating that community bond. And I think that is also why, obviously, we're working with Khan, who work with the Black community and cross-sector organizations to help us build community resilience, relationships, as well as, have social movements for health, but also I think financial health, which is really important for all of us. Gentlemen, I hope we're ready to give some answers. So one of the first questions we had was from a gentleman named John. And what John was asking is, what's the best way of combining the savings that you've got scattered across different pension schemes?
Yeah, I can take that one. So 2 approaches. If you can use any one of the current providers that you have to aggregate your other small pension pot into. With some providers, the process can be much more simpler than others. But I think what I'd like to highlight is potentially the value of utilizing support from a professional, because we highlighted the idea of compound growth, right? And the impact of what making the right decision today can have over 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how old you are today. So even though you can do it yourself and you can go to any one of your current providers or choose a completely new provider to aggregate your pensions, making the right decisions on how all of those pots are invested is also one of the main and most important factors, because if you're young, allocating your investment in certain types of asset classes may give you much better growth prospects than setting up your pension pot in using different asset allocation. So that element of asset allocation can be a benefit that you can get from utilizing a financial advisor over a long term, can have a massive difference on the overall value of your pension pot.
I wanted to ask on this note as well. How many people tend to actually seek out a financial advisor? So if you're listening, this might be one for you. And I'll be asking Sam and Jeffrey to perhaps address what stops people from actually accessing financial advice, whether it's a concern you don't have enough to actually go in there and have a discussion, or who knows, just perceptions. If you're listening and you've engaged with a financial advisor, perhaps you could say some of the benefits you've gained as well, if you don't have any questions yet. And if you haven't yet engaged with a financial advisor, maybe you could share with us some of the reasons why, and perhaps Sam and Jeffrey can dispel that for you. So Sam and Jeffrey, that was one of my questions. It sounds like the most sensible and straightforward thing to do, to go out and seek help. What puts people off? Are they afraid there's fees or something? What have you found? I think Sam wants to go there.
Yes, over time, some people think that because they are professionals, they've got a degree and they're working, they can do it themselves. And you find out that some people say, what value would an advisor give? I can go online and get it. Say, for instance, I'll just give an illustration. In terms of critical illness, if you go online to get a critical illness, you will always get what they call the standard, which will limit you from making a claim because you are not advised. And anybody can tick the boxes. You can actually lie on the application. Or if an advisor is asking you, he will ask more probing questions to be able to help you to answer them correctly. Because the essence of you meeting an advisor is that you have an indemnity for the advice he is giving you. And also, he will want to be sure that the premium you are paying will also be a reward for the time you spend coming to meet an advisor, and also beneficial to you that you can make a successful claim. So those are the kind of things that people think about. And we, as advisors, we encourage them to disbelieve that going to internet to shop for insurance or advice, financial advice online is not good. And for every financial advice you give, you tick a box from FCA that you have advised. And you must tick that. Is this advice? Is it advice or non-advice or execution only? So you have to tick that. And sometimes people don't want to pay the fees. You have to pay the fees if you need a quality service. But if you don't want to pay the fees, then you're on your own. So you don't have anybody to run to. Like all the information we have given here, we give it to those clients who are paying and not those who go online, because online, they will not talk to you about all the details that Jeffrey and myself have given to you. So we want to encourage our community, seek professional advice. If you're a medical doctor, that does not guarantee that you're a financial advisor. So you need to, irrespective of whatever career you have, for every profession, not just financial, seek professional advice. There are experts who have been trained, licensed to operate in these areas, and they will be able to help with joy and gladness. Thank you.
And I think just to kind of add to that in a bit of an illustration, you can cook a steak at home or go to Gaucho's restaurant. You can either work out at home, or you can use Pure Gym, which is, your relatively cheap gym, or you can go to a Virgin Gym where you have access to sauna, swimming pool, potentially a personal trainer, right? So I guess there's no right or wrong, and it goes back to how much value do you want to add, and making the right decisions today simply has a massive effect over the long term. So if you want to make if you want to make some of these decisions yourself, so be it. But there are many bits of information which is not necessarily readily available on when reading online. So it's simple. Do you want to simply just cook steak at home, or maybe go to a restaurant sometimes? And why do you value going to a restaurant? I mean, it's really asking yourself that question, because I can, go back to that individual, say maybe you're too expensive. Why do I pay for this? Well, why do you go and pay for someone to cook your food? It's the same principle. You're on mute.
Thank you very much. I was going to say that's an excellent point, and we do have to, I suppose, start to see some of these things as investments, which was one of the
Absolutely.
points that you made about being aware of some of the assets we have and what are the actual necessities that we seek to hold, not just the ones that we're pressured into, say, via social media or the like.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I believe so. I agree with both of what you're saying. Like, there is merit in engaging with a professional. Don't be afraid. Often, I believe there's also a free consultation, typically initially, to assess what's going on.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
and
think, and that's the way that many advisors work. There's always that complimentary review, and with some of our clients, that complimentary review can go over 2, 3, 4 sessions because they have a complex case. So many of us advisors bear the risk of investing time into someone where they could decide, to not use our services. Right? We're willing to invest that time into people because, the nature of most of us is, we really care about helping individuals. But for yourself, it's really investing yourself to learn as much as you can and soak up that information and make the right decision today. And if you utilize our service, you may utilize Sam for insurances, but there are many additional bits of information that you may learn from him, which may greatly add value to your life. And that's not going to come at a cost because you have access to that relationship.
excellent. And one of the points that was also made is you have to be honest when you're talking to these individuals. And I think even Sam was alluding to this. You should also perhaps be aware of some of the health issues that you might have, or that might be hereditary. And if you make those clear, it will affect some of the insurance you have, but you make sure that you're covered. And if you're not always as confident with speaking about these things, honestly, remember, we have a walk going up Snowdon next week. So you could practice having some of the conversations or speaking more honestly and openly about some of the things that we might not always be comfortable sharing, especially when it relates to our finances. So just a quick shameless plug. Remember, Men Talk Ubuntu have a walk up Snowdon, and who knows, a financial advisor might be present, but he won't be on the clock. That said, we did receive a few other questions while you were speaking. I believe the first one relates to state earnings related pension schemes. I'm not too certain because it was abbreviated. So they're asking if you're able to advise on opting out of SERPs, which I think refers to state earnings related pension schemes. I'm not sure if I've been offered that, but yeah.
So SERPs, or they call it SERPs as well. It was an approach that was available to individuals between sort of the late 1970s to, if I'm not incorrect, so around the 2015-16, where individuals were allowed to contract out of the state pension by making those contributions into their employer schemes. However, some individuals may have contracted out. It's no longer available for individuals to sort of contract out of state pension.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to take it offline to discuss a specific case, whether or not the individual had previously contracted out, and how it may be applicable or affecting their particular case.
Fantastic. Thank you for making that offer. Doretta, there's your answer. So get in touch or connect with us, and we'll be able to put you in touch. Then the next point was actually a commendation or a thank you, which was saying that Temitope took out a life policy recently and will have to review it again. So they were just thanking you for the advice, which is always great to hear. Fantastic stuff. So good to know people are getting value. And we've got a message from Sierra, who wants to ask if it's easy for a foster carer to have a mortgage. So I suppose this might relate to some of the options that you were talking about, Sam, when it comes to how you can leverage certain options available to you, if you will.
Yeah, well, I would say maybe you need to speak to me offline so that we can look at your case by case, because it's always case by case. So there are some lenders that can say yes, there are those that can say no. But when we have a meeting and sit down, we have a total picture of your circumstance and see how we can help.
Perfect. And I seem to have Doretta asking again. It's referring to the SERPs. And she's just saying it was actually wondering, how do you opt back in? If that's an option, I'm not certain.
So the new state pension became became applicable. So there was two types: the state second pension and the SERPs all together came to an end in 2016 and was replaced by the new state pension. So you can no longer contribute to the old schemes. And today, if you wanted to, increase the benefits that you get from state pension, it would be applicable based on the national insurance contribution that you're making. And in fact, you can log on to the Gov UK website and get access to your forecasted state pension. And if at the moment you're not on track to get the full state pension, then you can also make additional national insurance contribution to get you to the full state pension. But whether or not that's the right thing for you to do or consider maybe a private pension, I guess that's an element of the individual and should really be discussed with a professional. So a question they log on to where. So if you go on the Gov UK website, and if you type in on Google state pension forecast, and one of the links will be for the Gov UK website. And if you go on there, you'll be able to create your account with your password and national insurance number, and it will show you what you're forecasted to receive when you reach the state pension age.
Brilliant. Oh, you see, these are the benefits of having an expert in the room. Just if anything you heard, you can't buy time. And there you go. You've been saved hours and hours. One of the questions that I was also aware of is you suggested about investments and making your money work so that in the end, hopefully when you're not working, it's working for you and providing you some sort of income or addressing a certain gap. You also spoke about savings and the need to put some money away overall. I was wondering if we can also touch on if someone feels perhaps they're not in that position yet, they're still working with their debts, they maybe have too many and they feel like they can't yet get started on the saving front. What are some helpful first steps for people to take in addressing the debts, as well as then getting into the education of how to save and how to invest? But that first step for some who might still be working towards clearing their debts.
So, I mean, the starting point is still applicable, right? It's looking at your expenditures and looking at all forms of ways in which you can reduce how much is going out. If you reduce how much is going out, you have more to service your debts. And one of the best and first thing that you can do is look at consolidating your debts with the cheapest debt provider that you can provide, whether it's a zero interest credit card potentially, but looking at how you can maybe aggregate your debts and use maybe the cheapest debt provider to reduce the interest rates that you're currently paying on your debts. But then again, it's, with all of that, it's not, I'm giving advice, but depending on the case, it may be appropriate for an individual to consolidate their debts and use a cheaper debt provider to reduce how much they're paying towards interest. And then that can help towards clearing out your debt even much faster.
Fantastic. And with that thought in mind for me, Sam, you also kindly, when you were talking about sickness, accidents, and disabilities, you referred to this notion of if you're in the hospital, for example, receiving flowers rather than checks. So remember, you're receiving flowers today. This is not necessarily the advice you would get. It's just a discussion more than anything. Pay the check if you want the proper advice, people. So with regards to receiving flowers and checks, I was just thinking about the credit report that we often might have. And if we've missed a few of those payments, how long does a missed payment, or when we've had issues with our finance, how long does that last on our credit report? How long should we aim or plan for to sort of clear that before we can perhaps engage with the bigger sources of credit if we wanted to, say, take on a mortgage? What's a good time period to leave that?
Yeah,
Or
okay. Yes, ideally it stays on our credit file for 6 years before it drops off the radar. However, lenders ask various questions. Some, even if it has dropped, they will ask, have you ever had a CCJ or a default? And if you say a no, it's non-disclosure. So what we recommend is that even if you have CCJ or you have a default, well, it's in the time past, you can correct it. If you are planning to have a mortgage, speak to an advisor. They will be good, because there are levels of, some lenders look at it differently. Say, for instance, there are those that look at CCJ that is less than £1,000 as something that they can handle. There are those that will say it has to be less than £200. Some will say, yeah, the CCJ or the default, is it from phone or communication? We can ignore it. So it's like we say, everything is case by case. Until you speak to a professional, you will be able to know which direction you have to go. Ideally, it stays on a credit file for 6 years. Some can say after 3 years, we can help. And the depth of the length of the CCJ or the default or missed payment will affect generally the interest rates of the lending that you'll be getting. Okay, I hope that makes some more, brings some clarification to that.
absolutely does. Absolutely. I thank you very much for that. And with that said, I think we're on time overall. So we're coming to the end, and I think we've addressed most of the questions that were brought up. If there are any other questions that you want us to follow up on, please do either send them to Mentor Ubuntu. You can find us again on most of the social media platforms, or you can get in touch with Khan UK, or if you manage to jot down Sam's details, you can contact him directly or let us know. And I'm sure we can facilitate a bit more of this discussion. Well, the first question that we were asked was by Jeffrey, and that was whether or not, when a good time to start saving is. Saving, start planning. Yes, I think it was saving.
Start planning. No, start planning.
Start planning. There we go. And one of the participants that we have tonight said, when you start a family, and I think that's, although the best time was yesterday and today is okay as well, I think at the heart of it, that's what we're all trying to think about here. How do we plan our finances and our lives around our families so that we can do better? When it comes to the debts, remember the children analogy, debts are like small children. The smaller they are, the louder they are. And you can address them while they're small, and would advise probably that you do so. But seek professional help, whether that's you addressing a debt, whether that's you trying to figure out how to master your savings, or whether you're really trying to learn about this vast world of investing and making your money work for you. It's never too early or too late to start doing that. Absolutely. And of course, we will hopefully see you on the 27th of November. If you or someone in your family, a man, would like to hike and increase their network and probably their net worth by hanging out with the right people, find Mentor Ubuntu and join us for our Snowdon walk. Sam, Jeffrey, I cannot thank you enough for so kindly giving up your time and sharing your knowledge so richly to all of us. And I'm sure this will hopefully be the first of many conversations we have with you. And I wish you well and wish you a very pleasant weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you everyone for coming over.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Thank you.